with 1,200 casualties a day on the Russian side, with very marginal gains. You could get to a point when the Russian military walk off the battlefield. I don't think we're going to see that yet. The second one is, of course, is the centrality of Crimea to the myth of Russian imperialism. If that becomes untenable, then the elites in Russia could say enough is enough. Putin and his cronies need to be overthrown. And the final one is that the population of Russia has had enough and rise up and sort of dethrone him.
What do you think the current Ukrainian strategy is regarding Crimea? Has it changed or does it remain the same? Because according to some analysts, for example, the need to take out the Kerch Bridge is no longer there. And you've mentioned those successes on strikes into Crimea itself.
Well, I think you've seen recently, again, a number of ferries being taken out, part of the logistic support route, as it were, to Crimea. I think that psychologically, dropping the Kerch Bridge would be helpful, but I don't think you will see it being dropped at the moment by the Ukrainians because you need to set the conditions for that operational and strategic success for dropping that bridge. And that is when Putin would really be on the back foot because, again, it's the politics of Crimea from a Russian perspective that actually matter. It was that sort of notion in 2014 that he was raising up and gathering in the Russian people by annexing Crimea, and therefore everything from there on in would be a walkover. And of course, that's not been the case. So if Crimea goes and is untenable, then Putin potentially loses power. And that's always really been either directly or indirectly the Ukrainian notion of victory, really, in the same way that Russia understands that it can't take over geographically all the territory of Ukraine. And its theory of victory goes along the lines of disrupting the willpower and determination of the West to support Ukraine, and therefore leading to a settlement which is on Russian terms. And that's really the big divergence that you've seen in the last week or so with the Russian notion of a peace plan versus Zelensky's notion of a peace plan in Switzerland last week.
Yeah, but Vladimir Putin's notion of a peace plan, ceding Russian occupied territories, to Russia, it was ridiculous. He knew it was going to be refused before he even put that plan forward, didn't he?
Well, not necessarily from the perspective of the axis of dictatorships, and not necessarily from those people who sort of support his notion of a multipolar world and see the Americans as an imperial power. But if you look at all the various notions of peace deals, he would probably say that it is a humanitarian peace because it stops the killing. But of course, if you flip that coin, it is a surrender peace because the sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine has been diminished. They would have to get out of the four oblasts, which Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, which the Russians have not even taken. So the other two oblasts we didn't mention in terms of the situation on the battlefield at the moment. Luhansk, the offensive continues there, but the operations on the Kupiansk, Satovi, Crimea line remain unchanged. It's another one of those offensive areas where it's unchanged. And in Donetsk, though there have been advances in the Chasiv Yar direction, particularly in the last week or so, these are again just micro gains. And 3 months ago, I said the same thing, that the backbone of the Ukrainian Donetsk defense is the line along Kramatorsk-Sloviansk, which could threaten Pokrovsk, but it's the same as 3 months ago. It hasn't, because they haven't really had anything other than glacial gains.
Having said that, the MOD in London is reporting that Russian forces are within striking distance of the main supply route for Ukrainian troops defending the eastern Donbass region as it continues to push towards the garrison city of Pokrovsk. What would that mean if they do cut the supply route? And what if they do take that city?
Well, I don't think they're anywhere near that. It would be very significant, but in terms of geography, it's still, I think, about 80 kilometers away. So it would mean that they would achieve one of their objectives for the year, because the whole of the Donetsk Oblast would become untenable to the Ukrainians should they go that far. But there's a lot of fighting before you'd even get to that position. So I don't think that notion of encirclement and cutting that is credible at the moment. So I don't see that as something which is going to occur in the short term. The real sort of toing and froing at the moment is between the sort of sword and the shield. I think between the ISR drones, the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance drones of the Russians being targeted by the first-person view drones of the Ukrainians, and within that you have this electronic warfare bubble where the notion of who wins the electronic battle between drone, counter drone, and guided weapons is really significant. That will inhibit or enable forces to move in the future. And that really comes onto this notion again of control of the air, because all the things to do with drones are really just a democratization of the air battle and delivering it at a lower level than it's been with the use of air power historically. So it's just another notion of air power for the future. And that's also really interesting when you get to, for example, notions of the F-16, because there were four factors for success in 20th century warfare. The first was control of the air. It's absolutely a necessity. The second and third are shock and surprise, which the Russians may have had in terms of their offensive towards Kharkiv city, but that started on the 10th of May, so we're already sort of 6 weeks down the line with not much gained. And the fourth one is offensive recce. Now, all those, unless you have all those factors together, your ability to achieve operational success is really, really quite a narrow thing in front of you. So they're just not there for either side. So restoring that sort of mobility and breakthrough to the battlefield is what each side seeks to achieve. And one of the interesting things I think this week was the capture by the Ukrainians of one of the turtle tanks of the Russians. Now, it'll be interesting when they analyze that, because the turtle tank is really a large protected carrier which seems to be immune from loitering weapons and first-person view drones, but it carries an electronic suite and a flail type entrenchment or tool at the front to try and clear sort of a path for forces to pass through. The sort of notion from Little Heart of the expanding torrent, where you have a narrow breakthrough and then you can fan out to achieve operational success. So that shows you really the electronic battle that is going on. So I think there'll always be this to and fro, and the ECM battle, the electronic countermeasures battle, one side develops, one side counters. That is the one which will be interesting, I think, to see in the next few months.
How do you expect the war to develop over the summer months? And do you think that the combination of US aid, the new ability to use foreign weapons in a limited way inside Russia, these developments, could it mean that the most dangerous point has been passed for Ukraine this year?
Yeah, I think the most dangerous point for Ukraine is passed. But again, it comes back to how wars end. Neither side is going to be strong enough to conquer the other in military terms or military geographic terms. So if you go back to the Second World War, Eisenhower's directive, because we've just had D-Day, was to, with allies, to go to the heart of Europe and destroy the German armies. You're not going to see Russia in a position to do that. Neither are you going to see Ukraine in a position to do that to the Russian army. And therefore, you go back to how wars end. And they end in three ways. Firstly, by decisive military victory. Chances of that are still pretty low. The second one, because of the indecisiveness of military victory, which leads to some sort of negotiation. That's not on the cards at the moment. Or the third one, which is going to be on the cards for both of them at some stage, but not yet, is because either the political, military, sociological, population, economic, social, cultural, social, economic, whatever you want, costs are too great to one side, and therefore the will and determination to go on is diminished to a point where you need to have a settlement. Essentially, that's what happened with the destruction of the will of the Russian army in 1917, leading to the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. And you could posit, I don't think it's likely at the moment, that with 1,200 casualties a day on the Russian side, with very marginal gains, you could get to a point when the Russian military walk off the battlefield. I don't think we're going to see that yet. The second one is, of course, is the centrality of Crimea to the myth of Russian imperialism. If that becomes untenable, then the elites in Russia could say enough is enough. Putin and his cronies need to be overthrown. And the final one is that the population of Russia has had enough and rise up and sort of dethrone him. Now, you probably, to do that in a dictatorship is very, very difficult, but historically, you only need 3.5% of the population to take to the streets and show their massive dissent to bring about some meaningful change, as we saw, for example, in the revolutions in 1989, which deposed Ceausescu and some of those other Eastern Bloc countries. Neither of those, I think, is tenable in the next sort of 3 months, though.
You've been watching Frontline for Times Radio with me, Kate Gerbeau. My thanks to our producers today, Louis Sykes and Morgan Burdick, and for you for watching. If you'd like to support us, you can subscribe now, or you can listen to Times Radio for the latest news and in-depth analysis, or go to thetimes.co.uk. For now, though, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.